KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292FQ Riverside, and K293CF Moreno Valley.
To heroin and meth. And she's going to be continuing on. This is her third time talking about her story.
And hopefully last.
And she's hoping it's her last. It's kind of a long story, so she's going to do the best that she can. Where we left off, let me just give a little recap. Alyssa, when she was young, she struggled with social anxiety, and she used to have issues with cutting herself and with not anorexia, but with like vomiting, and then also bulimia, playing the pass out game, things like that. She always kind of felt like she needed some sort of release. And so eventually when she was a little older, maybe 18 or 19, she was drinking, and also she started taking oxycodone, and she became addicted to that. And then she got into a relationship with an abusive person, a boyfriend, moved out of the house, moved in with him, and there was some abuse involved there between him and his mom.
Yeah, got on heroin and meth.
Then got addicted to heroin and meth. And then after that, ended up in rehab, leaving rehab.
Lots of different rehabs,
and then
actually.
Finally got to a rehab where she met the baby's, not her father, the baby daddy. And then she got clean for a while while she was pregnant with her first child, Zoe. And then she started using, and I had to kick her out. It was a really heartbreaking day for me. Still remember it. Like
take over guardianship of my daughter.
Yeah, and then I took over guardianship, but Alyssa did sign her over. But yeah, it was a really difficult time. So Zoe lived with me for at least 2 years, by herself. I was her guardian while Alyssa was homeless. So she ended up homeless out in Orange County, and that was the second part of her story that she just finished going over. So now we're going to pick up where we left off there from her leaving Orange County.
Okay, so...
Welcome, Alyssa.
Oh, hi. Thank you. So after, when we were in Orange County for a long time, we kind of got, I guess, tired of staying in the same place for too long, but also scared because a lot of weird and creepy things were happening. There was a lot of gangs over there in the Orange County area, and it was just kind of scary. So we ended up taking a bus, kind of just like as far away as we could on that one bus, and it took us to Palm Springs. So when we were in Palm Springs for a while, there was this person we had met, and they had overdosed and passed away. And I remember there was this other man walking on the street, this homeless guy that we also kind of had acquaintances with. And I ended up telling him, did you know so-and-so passed away of an overdose? And he had asked me, oh, really? Do you know where they picked up their dope from? And I remember being really shocked. And I was like, why would you want that? And he was like, well, because I want to pick some up myself, because it must be some really good stuff if they ended up dying off of it. And I was just shocked. Yeah, it was my first time like ever hearing that. And it just, I mean, I think I've heard about it before, but not like personally experienced it. And it really scared me. It disgusted me. It horrified me. But I ended up seeing it a lot more later on too. So
it's just like him saying that was kind of like in your head a way of thinking like, wow, this is really bad if somebody is thinking, I need to go pick up these drugs that killed somebody because it's a better high.
Not that I was thinking, oh, yeah, they're so much worse than me. Nothing like that.
No, I'm not saying worse. I'm just saying, like, it was kind of like, whoa.
Yeah, it was like a shock. Yeah, it almost felt like a sick feeling. I can't explain it. But, so yeah, and then out there, we were in Palm Springs for a while, and the drugs just got really expensive, and they were really scarce and hard to find. So we ended up, me and my baby's father, ended up going and taking the bus and just taking it to see, like, try to find a more seedy area so maybe we could find better and more cheaper drugs and more of them. So we ended up getting on the bus and looking out the window, and we ended up seeing, we went like quite a while, I mean, maybe like 40 minutes, and we ended up looking out the window and seeing these three guys like standing, and they were leaning over, nodding out. And by nodding out, I mean they're really, really high. They're so high that they're like fading in and out, And so they ended up.
When you say fading in and out, you mean and nodding out, you mean like moving their head like down and like falling
Yeah,
asleep?
yeah, they were like falling asleep basically because of the heroin, and we were like, "This is our stop." And so we ended up getting off the bus, and it ended up being a city called Indio, and Indio had a lot of drugs, a lot of cheap drugs, and a lot of homeless people. So it ended up being a place where we liked. I mean, because of the state that we were in at the time, always, looking for drugs and being high. It was the easiest place for us to be.
Most people's goal is to move to a seedy area.
Right.
So, yeah, we understand.
Yeah. And then, so basically, me and my baby's father, we would fight a lot. And we ended up getting separated out there because, well, for a second, he took off and he left because he was mad at me about something. And this is maybe like the second night there, and this is 2 a.m. And so he's taking off from me, and I'm like yelling after him, like, wait, don't leave me. And I'm like yelling and screaming at him and chasing him down the street. And all of a sudden, there's this guy and this girl that are yelling at us, and they're yelling our names. And I'm like, who is that? How do they know us? And the guy has a mask pulled down over his face, like a beanie type thing with like eye holes. And I was like, that's weird. And he had a big old machete in his hand. And I was like, okay, this is creepy. And the girl was like, oh, Alyssa, come here. And I'm like, how do you know my name? And then my baby's father and him, he kind of just ignored me and then talked to the guy because I guess he knew who the guy was under the mask, but the guy didn't know that he knew who he was, I guess. And they were talking about drugs and if he had any because he was trying to find some. So they took us to this abandoned apartment. It was like up like three floors. And we went up to the top and it was just like an abandoned apartment, but there was a bunch of just random clothes and stuff all over the place. Obviously, homeless people had been sleeping it for a while. And so we're like, oh, this is a good place to do it. So I went on the stairs and I had something called cottons. And cottons are when you use heroin or meth, if you're using it in a needle, and you cook it up on the spoon. The cotton, the piece of Q-tip or whatever, one piece of cigarette butt, bottom of it, that you put inside of there to cook it up in, you save those for later. So you could put water in them and then you could reuse them later. So I had a couple cottons left. And so I sitting outside on the stairwell, upstairs, like where it was like right outside of on the balcony. And I was sitting out there trying to do my cottons. And my baby's father was inside with both of the couple. And the guy ended up, or the girl ends up coming outside. He's in there for a long time. But it took me a long time to hit.
Which is what?
Is when you end up, or when you try to, when you shoot up. That's basically all it means, hitting. And so he ended up, the girl ended up coming outside and she walks past me and she's like really, really mad for some reason. And she takes off down the stairs. Well, her boyfriend ends up coming over to me and he ends up telling me, hey, why don't you bleep me for some heroin? And and I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. What are you talking about? Like, my boyfriend's right inside. What's wrong with you? And he's like, no, you should,
Okay.
I wasn't going to say it, but, and so I ended up telling him, no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm looking around like, where is he? Like, why is he inside still? Why isn't he not coming out? And so he ends up leaning down and he grabs my leg and I ripped his hand off my leg and he's holding a machete literally to my throat. And I just rip his hand off of my leg and I'm looking at him like what's wrong with you? And he ends up, he's like, he reaches over and he grabs my purse because he gets mad. He grabs my purse and he starts taking off because obviously I'm not going to do what he wants. And I thought something worse was going to happen, but I thought that my baby's father would run out. And I'm like, what's going on? Well, he grabs my purse and I'm like, there's nothing in there. And then he just takes off and leaves. And I was like, whatever. And I was like, so I went inside to go see what was like wrong. I'm like, is he dead? Like, what happened? And I'm looking all around. I like start to look around the apartment and I get just this feeling. I'm like, I don't know, maybe if he is like, I should leave. So I took off downstairs and the door was locked. So I unlocked it and I ran down there and he ran down the stairs and he was coming right back up because what happened to him, the guy held a gun to him and said, the guy held a gun to my baby's father's head and said, give me all your money and everything you got. So basically he was robbing him and I didn't hear anything because they were inside the sliding glass door. I was out on the balcony and he ended up, robbing him for like $20. That's all he had. And then Then his girlfriend left, and then he tried to get me to sleep with him. So, but after that, so he's like, yeah, he held a gun to my head and he told me, get outside. And then he locked the door on him. So he had to run around and try to catch up to me. But yeah, that was really scary.
You know what's baffling to me? It's like when you see somebody with a mask on with eye holes and a machete.
It was terrifying.
You go with them, but you guys went with them to an
I
abandoned.
didn't want to, but the girl was walking. So basically, my baby's father and him, they were like linked up almost, and they started walking together. And the girl walked behind me and was like pushing me along. So I felt like something was. I knew immediately. I was like, "This is bad." Like, but I felt scared because he had a machete, and he was asking my baby's father if he wanted to buy a gun. So I was like, "Okay, this is not good."
You felt forced to go.
Yeah, she was literally pushing me along with them, and I was like, "Okay, this is weird. How does he not get that something's happening?"
Right.
It was bad.
I guess when you're desperate like that, sometimes. I mean,
Yeah,
not,
he
maybe
was
not with you, but
hoping
maybe
that they
with
would
him,
have something
it was
because
just desperation.
yeah. So yeah, the time really flew by too. When I was on meth, I don't really know why it flew by so fast. I feel like it's just you really focus on something like usually unproductive things like picking on my face, and I would sit there. Now you don't understand. You could sit there for like 10 to 15 hours on your face and you don't even notice you're doing it for that long, and then you all of a sudden realize it's dark and you're like, wait, I just woke up. It was just morning. And then you're still doing it, and then hours pass by and it's morning already again. So like a full 15 to 20 hours could pass by of you sitting there doing the same thing and you don't even realize that you're doing it and that how long it's been. So the years that I was on the street just flew by.
They did.
They flew
Wow.
by.
I've never heard anyone say that. That's interesting. I have seen lots of people on meth, and I've seen like the results of it. I've seen people up all night writing poetry, writing things down, picking their faces, all kinds of stuff. But I didn't realize for them
It goes by
how much
fast.
time they're losing, you know, or that they're not realizing. I mean, obviously you're losing time, precious time.
Oh yeah.
Your family feels it.
I know, and all the time I would think about my daughter, and I missed her a lot, and I always wanted to see her. And I always found it so baffling because there's a lot of people on the street that they have kids, but they don't really either talk about them or don't want to talk about them. But when I bring up my daughter and then ask if they would have kids, they'd either tell me, no, I don't want to talk about that. Or they would say, oh, yeah. Like they didn't care. It was weird. I felt like I cared more than others because I would want to talk about her all the time. But
Well,
maybe
is
it's
it a
just
matter
because
of not caring, or is it a matter of
being
being
numb,
ashamed?
maybe, or ashamed, numb. There's probably
Sad?
lots of reasons for it, but
Yeah,
it
people
just
deal with
really
things
it struck
differently.
me. I don't know why, but that's something that's always that was always stuck with me because I constantly talked about her, and it's just I don't know. Maybe they've just been longer into it than I was, but yeah.
It's a defense mechanism probably. And then sometimes people, I don't know, maybe they're a little detached from their child. Maybe they didn't have them, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe they were raised by somebody who was detached from them, so they
Right.
weren't feeling that bond.
I know.
Like they didn't know how to bond. I don't know. But I know on my end, while you were out there, I was at home with Zoe, and we were watching, like at night, she would sleep with me, and we would watch the video that you and her dad made for her while you were pregnant, when you were first pregnant with her, singing that little song.
Yeah.
That it was-
It was the Juno song.
Yeah, it was very hard, like for her, and so that's just a side note. You know, that she was thinking about you a lot.
I remember.
and wishing you were home.
Yeah, and you would tell me she would cry a lot at night.
Oh,
It made
we
me
would both
sad.
cry.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's on the other
And
side.
it's
Of,
a-
you're
and then-
losing all kinds of time, but
See,
for us,
and
it
then-
felt like forever.
Yeah, and then but still on my side, it still was like I would sit there, and then you would tell me that, and I would just cry, and I would think about it all the time, and I cried a lot. I cried more while I was using than I ever cried when I was not using, which is crazy because a lot of people who were using just kind of like, I mean, I was numb, but I also was super depressed, and I don't know. I cried a lot more than a lot of people did.
You think so?
I mean, I haven't since I've been clean. I mean, I think I've cried maybe 3 times.
It's a
It's just,
different-
but I
it's a
cried
different-
constantly, all day, every day.
Oh yeah, because you missed
Not
your
all day,
daughter.
but you know, yeah. But so I saw a lot of overdoses, actually, and for a lot of them, my baby's father was there, and he would administer CPR and save those people's lives, which was crazy, or at least do it until an ambulance would come. There was this boy, I mean, not boy, but I think he was between 19 and 20. He was a friend of mine out there on the street named Roba. I always felt bad for him. I don't know. There was something about him. He was just a sweet, sweet kid. He was, always there. He was always there for me when I needed him. He was always just kind to everybody. And he just seemed like he was, I don't know, not innocent, because obviously you can't really be when you're out using drugs and stealing and stuff. But there was something innocent about him, and it just made me sad for him. And he ended up overdosing. And, well, it was maybe like he spent 2 months in jail. He got caught for using, and he spent 2 months in jail. And then right after he got out, the day he got out, he went to go use, and he used just a little bit. So if you don't use for a long time, if you don't use for a long time and then you go right back to it, a lot of people end up using too much, like the same dose they were using before, or even just a small dose, like a dime of drugs, and they end up overdosing accidentally. But the thing about this overdose is that there was 2 other people there with him, and it was 2 people I knew. And I didn't find out about it until a few weeks after, it made me sick to my stomach. But no, not a few weeks after. Actually, it was a couple days, because when somebody ended up sitting there telling me in front of the dealer who was there, who left him to die there, he saw him overdosing and just left him to die and let him overdose and die there. And he was sitting there in front of us one day, we were sitting there on the side of a CVS on the grass, and that's where we would all hang out and we would use and stuff. And he ended up, there was this guy who's my friend. He came and sat next to me. Oh, that's my phone going off.
Go turn it off.
Okay.
Or I'll go turn off. You keep telling your story.
Okay. So sorry about that. So he ended up, he was sitting next to me, and he told me that Roba had overdosed, and that this dealer that was sitting in front of me was sitting there while he was overdosing, and watched him overdose and just took off and left and let him die. And he knew that had happened, and he said it loud enough for him to hear. And he was literally sitting right in front of us, and he said it loud enough for him to hear. And so he kind of turned his head and kind of looked over at me. And this dealer, he was a guy who he would try to hit on me when his girlfriend wasn't around and stuff. So obviously it was something he didn't want me to hear, and he didn't want me to know. And literally at that same exact moment, somebody starts overdosing, and my baby's father jumps on top of them and starts administering CPR. And he ends up, the guy pushes my boyfriend off of him and starts giving him CPR right in front of me. And I thought that was just so ridiculous. Like, really, it's all about looks for you. That's all it's about. And it made me sick.
Well, and customers, right?
And customers.
You guys were his customers. I think you forgot you had told me a story one time about the boy who had overdosed. Can you tell us a little bit
about Roba?
Yeah, Roba. Can you tell us a little bit about that time? Or do you want to?
He told me a secret. Well,
you don't have to if it's
I won't say what it is. He told me a big secret, and it was something that's not. It's something that's acceptable nowadays, but it wasn't acceptable in his family. I mean, something you could probably read between the lines. And when I told him, I was like, well, you could just tell me. And he's like, no, I don't know if I can, because you're going to look at me different, and you're just going to think I'm disgusting. I'm like, I'm not going to think you're disgusting. And then he ended up telling me, and I hugged him, and I said, I love you. It's okay. And then he started crying and just holding me too, and just hugging onto me, and like a baby. And he just cried, and he was like, I love you too. You love me? And I was like, yes, I love you. And he's like, I love you too. And
I apologize, because I didn't think about that aspect of his family. I didn't think about that aspect of it. I was just thinking, it shows kind of a little bit about how he's feeling at the time he's on the streets and he's using it. We don't know what people are going through emotionally,
right.
That brings them to that point of starting to use.
Right.
But I think that sometimes when a person feels like they have this secret that they can't tell or they cannot be themselves, that can contribute to that.
Yep.
Definitely.
That too, definitely. And at this point I was stealing a lot too, from stores. And there's a lot of us too that are like, well, we're better than other people because we don't steal from people. We steal from stores. That's kind of, there's always something that we use, I think, to feel better about ourselves. Like, at least I don't do this, and at least I don't do that. And we used to, all of us, even me, we would use those things to make ourselves feel better. We'd say those things out loud. Well, at least we don't do that.
Like that.
Yeah,
it
but
would be
we'd
like,
all
well, at
do
least
it.
I don't drink alcohol. Oh, you are doing a lot of meth, like a lot of meth. But okay. They'd be like, damn alcoholics. I'm like, Okay. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, there was a lot of those too. It was weird to me to see too because a lot of the alcoholics, the meth addicts, and the heroin addicts hated each other. Everywhere I went, and they would always talk crap about the other one, like, "Oh yuck, I would never do meth. That's so sick. Those people are just whacked." And then the meth addicts would be like, "Oh man, those heroin addicts are just junkies. They're disgusting. They don't do shit with their lives. They're on."
Watch your mouth.
Oh, sorry. um, and then the alcoholics would always talk about the drug addicts because they were like, oh, they do drugs, that's just sick. And then the drug addicts about the alcoholics, it was just a cycle of always trying to make themselves feel better by hating on somebody else. And I tried not to. I was an alcoholic, a meth addict, a heroin addict. I was all of them. So I kind of was one of the ones that fit in between all of them. And I just didn't understand why they would say those things about each other. Now that I'm sober, I realize it, and it makes sense. It's sad that it's like that because they're all the same.
Right. It's very like, I don't know if you could say dehumanizing, but it kind of like, takes takes something away from them,
Right.
as a human being. And it also builds them up. So it's almost like bullying, but, criticizing somebody else because you're already feeling so down about yourself.
Right, exactly. So I went home. I went home for a while, home to you.
Oh, I remember.
Mm-hmm. And you had me start going to the methadone clinic.
I remember.
And
I was up at 5 a.m.
I was still using, and a lot of it was because, not because, but I didn't. I mean, I did want to stop, but I don't think. Obviously, I wasn't ready to stop, and I didn't realize that. I just wanted to be with Zoe, my daughter, and I didn't. Yeah, I was trying. But then the doctor there would sit there and tell me, oh, no, it's okay for you to use until you start getting to a higher dose and you can slow down. And he's like, some people just don't ever stop.
He said that?
Yeah, he said that.
Wow.
So, I mean, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on there. There's a lot of people that are using, I mean, they drug test there, but it doesn't matter if you come back dirty or not. It doesn't matter. You'll just up your dose for methadone.
Oh, they will.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not saying methadone doesn't work for people because it does. It works for a lot of people. I'm just saying, and I don't say it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. I'm just saying I was abusing it.
Yeah, and it was hard because I had you at my house, and I had suspicions that you were still using, and you shouldn't have been there. So, but I was still at the same time in my head, I was like so hopeful that you were going to get better and that this would be the answer. I just wanted some sort of answer. So I was kind of desperate, getting up at 5, driving you to Palm Springs for methadone.
I thought it was going to work.
Driving to work, and getting home at night, and just being exhausted, and it was just.
I thought I was just going to get on the methadone, and I was going to be able to stop. I didn't realize it was going to take more than that for me to get to the point where I needed to stop. And yeah, when you found out, you ended up kicking me out again.
That was some drama. Can I just say?
Yeah.
That was probably like out of all the times that I ever had to kick you out, the worst.
You said, let's hear about it.
Let's hear about that? Okay. So you want to tell or am I telling? So here's what
we have differences opinions about this one. So.
Oh, okay. Well, Joe wants to hear it. So here we go. So Alyssa comes home, and so I'm getting up at the crack of dawn to drive her to methadone. Then I'm coming home and driving her daughter to school, then going to daycare, then to me to work, and then back. And, I end up finding out that she's still using, and I go to kick her out. But she's very, high on meth at the time, and, or coming off meth, I think. So she's nuts, basically. Crazy. So she starts yelling at me that I'm the worst mother in the world.
That's not how.
Okay.
Why would I randomly just start saying.
You did. Alyssa, you so did. You were like, something to the effect of you're the worst mother ever. And then you got your stuff, and then you got all your stuff, and you were like in my face
you
yelling.
Told me, it's time for you to come to bed now with us. It was 9 p.m. and I didn't want to go to bed.
Because I knew you were wired.
And I was like, it's 9 p.m. I don't want to go to bed. You're like, you're coming to lay down in bed with us and go to sleep. And I'm like, it's 9 p.m. I don't want to go to sleep. I want to watch TV. And you're like, if you don't lay down and go to sleep, you're out. And I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, why would I
because
go?
I
And
I
I'm like,
had
I'm
told
not.
you before. That wasn't the first time you heard that you needed to start coming to bed on time, because I started realizing you were up all night long. I'm like, this girl's back on drugs. I'm going to check it by having her come to bed, and if she can't sleep, I'm going to know.
She's also
Like,
very. We're both stubborn and both like are.
no.
But
I'm kidding. I know.
and so I felt like it was more of a controlling thing,
wasn't.
and it really was.
Plus, I think you had the baby's dad coming over and stuff too.
Yeah, that he I wasn't having him come over. He would show up and make me feel bad, and so he would have me put him in the garage. I literally
At any rate, you had no boundaries, and he was coming over, and that
he was
wasn't
just taking
okay.
advantage of my nature.
So,
But
anyways, so
anyway.
we had a big fight that night.
Yeah.
And I kicked you out, and you yelled in my face that I was a horrible mother and all this kind of stuff. But what was really bad about it, though, really like seriously bad, was that Zoe heard, Kaylee heard, like her sister was there, her baby was there, and she literally like went into the room and said she was going to kill herself to her daughter and her sister. That was horrible.
I don't
And
remember
they
saying
were both
that.
just bawling and holding each other. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare. Like, so I had kicked her out previously for drinking. That was pretty bad too, because I had a broken ankle, and
That
you were
was a long
drinking,
time
and
ago.
you pushed me on my broken ankle, and that was some
Because
drama.
you tried to hit me with your crutch.
No, I think I smacked you with my hand in the face.
Yeah, and so I tried to push
I think
you
I
away
smacked
from
you
me.
in the face that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was some drama too. But anyways, so
We've
But-
been through
but-
some stuff.
right, but yeah, this is embarrassing at this point.
It's real. It's
Thanks,
what
Joe.
happens.
Our reputations are shot. No, I'm just kidding. That's
Well, we got over it. That's the thing.
the important
we worked
thing.
through
Yeah, we grew up together.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, go on, Alyssa, with your story. So that was a very bad time. That
Yeah.
time, the heroin time, because the methadone, and I really was hopeful that it would work.
Yeah.
And she left upset. She left Zoe upset and Kaylee upset. And
I was
and-
more,
but it was good for
mostly
me in a
upset
certain
because
way.
I didn't want to leave Zoe. I wanted to be with her. That's
Yeah,
the main
and
thing.
for
And
me-
me and her were getting like finally getting back together, and it was just so good. And I was so happy that she was so happy, and I was doing all the stuff with her, and she just seemed so happy. And just the thought of me leaving the house, like and her leaving her sad and crying and upset like I did when she first left. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, that's all right.
It just made me sad.
Yeah. And I think what made me sad too, and I don't know if it was this time or a different time, but at one point in time you said to me, I had a room, and I had a house, and now you're taking, oh God. Yeah, I cried. And I think that was that night. That was very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was hard. You all right?
Yeah.
All right.
That was like one of the hardest times. And then the first time leaving her.
But I think to a certain degree that was good for me, because I realized like I can't allow this. Like, I mean,
Right.
every
You
time
had
I
to
knew
set
I
your
couldn't allow
boundaries,
it, but
yeah.
it was just another boundary that I had to set, and I had to realize like,
Right.
okay, but I had to try. As a parent, I had to try.
Right.
Go ahead, honey.
Okay, so let's get on with the story now before I break down again. Okay, so basically, when you kicked me out, I ended up going over and living in Banning. There's these, in Beaumont, there's these train tracks where there was these tents set up and these homeless people that stay there. And we used to, me and my baby's father started staying over there in the tents with them. Now, these tents were disgusting. These tents were bad. They were bad. There were mice in them. Like the mice would come in at night and they would crawl over your chest and they would just, it was just so sick. It was gross. And there was this one time I hear, Alyssa. And I'm like, I wake up and I'm like, what? And they're like, don't get out of your tent. And I'm like, why? And they're like, there's a huge snake right outside of the tent. And I'm like, what do you mean a huge snake? And they're like, hang on. And so all the guys are scared. They don't want to do anything about it, except for this one guy. He ends up coming over, and he was the more feminine guy, and the feminine guy. He came and he was like, "Oh my God, you guys are just gonna leave her?" And he comes over and he takes an umbrella and starts hitting the snake, and the snake all of a sudden he's like, Alyssa, come out. And I'm like, what? And I look out and he's like, the snake was huge. I've never seen, and it was up like this and it was striking at him and it was going, and he was trying to hit it with his umbrella. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And he's like, run. I'm like, oh my God. So we're both running. He's like, oh my God.
That's great. I love it.
It was, yeah.
But I felt awful because you called me.
I didn't have a blanket. I was freezing. Somebody
awful.
stole all of the stuff. Like always, if you're living on the street, they'll steal the shoes off your feet, and it's happened before. My baby's father, they stole the shoes off of his feet twice before. I don't know. We would sleep hard because we were using, and they would literally just come and we would have our backpacks. We'd sleep with them on our backs, and I would always wake up if somebody was like, because it's happened. I woke up with somebody trying to take my backpack off, and I'm like, what's going on? And they end up taking off running. But but he always had his shoes stolen. I mean,
And he always stole nice shoes. He always stole the bands.
well, not from people. Like I said again, but he would go to the store. Yeah, they always wanted his stuff because he would go to these high end stores and he would steal stuff from them.
Yeah,
and
he always looked like.
Yeah, he always looked good.
You couldn't really always tell that he was using because.
Yeah, everybody always asked if he was in the military.
Shower at the gym, and sometimes he'd work out, and sometimes he didn't look like it.
And for some reason, his muscles stayed.
Well,
they always stayed. He didn't work out when he was using.
Well, he wasn't.
And it was weird. So everybody was always like, "How are you using?" But me, the cops would be like, every time. Something I was just thinking about. Every single time we got arrested, they would ask Chance's birthday. They would get it right. Then they would be like, "Oh, are you in the military?" to Chance. And to me, they would be like, "So when is your birthday?" And I'd say 1991, and they would be like 1981, and I'm like.
Oh,
every time. You don't know how many times it happened. It happened almost every time. I'm like,
I know you were
1991.
upset. One time they said, like, they were telling each other, look at this, look at her picture here.
Oh, yeah. The cops, they had stopped and they were like, what's your name? And they looked me up in the system and they saw my old picture from when I was like, I think 18, and I had my first shoplifting charge. And they were like, oh my gosh, look at this. Come look at this. Look at what she used to look like years ago. And they were like, look at her now. Look at her. And they were looking at me and looking back and forth. They were like, wow.
Right,
and then they told me they had stopped me and my baby's father because we were crossing the street illegally, jaywalking. They gave us a ticket. And they were like, when I was like, wow, okay. And while they were walking away, they were like, bye, Felicia, to me. And I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It was so rude.
But the night with the snake, I felt really bad. Like, when I look back at the whole time that you were using and you were on the streets, I have regrets.
I asked you for a blanket.
Yeah.
Because it was so
I have
cold.
regrets, but I think not too many of them because I had to have boundaries. But that night I felt bad. I mean, I got off the phone with you and I cried, but I felt like I couldn't go do it. I felt like because sometimes as a parent, you feel like anything you do for them, how do I say it? It is enabling. And so then you feel like if she's stuck without a blanket and there's a snake in her tent, maybe she'll come to the end of it. That was always my thought, was like, maybe this will help bring her to the end of it,
Yeah.
But no, not so much, Joe. I don't know what it takes.
We've all been through.
Well, we're going to find out what it takes, aren't we?
Stuff. Yeah.
What it took for you anyways.
Yeah. So basically, my baby's father got arrested when we were living over there by the train tracks, and he was my means to get drugs at this point because out there, it was harder to steal from stores and not get caught for me. In Indio, I could do it easy, and I could sell this stuff to other people who maybe weren't born here in this country. And I sold my stuff to them very, very cheaply. And they liked that a lot, so they always bought stuff from me in Indio. But out here in Banning and Beaumont, it was impossible. So he would go to the big stores, and he didn't look like the type. So he was able to take things more easily than I was. Well, when he got arrested, I was kind of screwed, And I ended up one day, I was walking around, and I wanted to go to this Dollar General. So I went to the Dollar General and I just had this weird thought, like, what if I'm pregnant? And when you're using, your period stops. It stops, and I hadn't had it for a long time. And the thought just popped into my head, like, what if I'm pregnant?
You're also very thin. Thin people lose their periods too.
Oh, right, right. And I was like, well, what if I'm pregnant? And I was like, well, that's silly. But I just, and I was also, it was right when coronavirus first came out. And I remember walking through this field right next to the train tracks. And I was like, how horrible would it be to be pregnant in this time right now? It feels like the end of the world during the end times or whatever. That's what I felt like. And so I was like, I'm just going to get a test. So I went to the Dollar Tree and I stole a test and I went in their bathroom and I had an ice cream I had stolen from their chair. I'm sitting there eating it and I go on the test and I put it down and it comes up positive right away. And I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And so I start bawling, crying, and I leave the place. I'm crying. I'm walking around the streets like a crazy person, just literally saying, I'm pregnant. Oh my gosh. And I just like, I don't know what it was, but I felt like it was a boy. So I just kept saying, it's a boy. It's a boy. And I was just crying. I know I look crazy, but I was just talking out loud and just really upset. And I was like, I can't believe it. And like, yeah, I ended up crying for a long time. And then, yeah,
I think you called me
I called you.
crying.
I
think,
told you.
and I went off. I don't
Yeah.
know. I said something like,
How what am I going to raise this baby too?
yeah, I
And
think
I
I
was
said
like-
I'm not going to raise this baby too. Is what I think I said.
No, you didn't say it. You said that before. If you better never get pregnant again because I'm not going to raise it this time. And then you didn't say that this time when I was actually pregnant. You were like, "What the f are you gonna get clean now?" And I was like, and you, I don't remember.
Oh yeah,
exactly,
I did ask that.
But you ended up saying something, and I was like, I don't know. And then I ended up hanging up with you. I don't remember how that ended really.
Yeah, I think I made it worse. But
It was just
what was weird
a
about it is
nightmare.
I was Googling something, something to do with like you having PCOS because like I was surprised like now she's pregnant again and she's not supposed to be able to get pregnant the second time. And literally whatever I Googled, it came up with a medication that was to help clear fallopian tubes. And it was a medication you had just been on at my house because you had an infection. I took you to
Like,
the doctor.
yeah,
So literally
like
coming home,
cellulitis or something.
yeah,
or staph
so
infection.
yeah. So literally coming home and getting on methadone was the reason that probably the reason that you got pregnant.
Right.
say,
I did
because you-
slow down a
because
lot on
I got
the
you
drugs
on
then
medication
too when I was
for your
on
infection.
methadone. Yeah. So I think slowing down way down on that and then being on methadone and then the medication, it probably
Yeah.
ended up and then also the obvious reason we get pregnant.
Oh, stop. COVID is boring? I don't know.
I had a shirt that said that when
I
I
know.
was my pregnant shirt and it said, what did it say? It was like,
Not everything in COVID.
oh yeah, not all of COVID. Something like
was boring.
Was boring.
Her maternity shirt.
Yeah.
People love that.
that was the best maternity shirt I ever had. Okay. Proof that not everything is boring in COVID or something like that. Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, I still have it, but so when I ended up going back to Indio because I wasn't able to stop right away using, even though with Zoe, I ended up quitting. I think 2 weeks after I found out I was pregnant. I was able to quit 2 weeks later. It took me about 2 weeks, but this time with this baby, it was harder. It was a lot harder. I just wasn't ready. And people were really rude to me, especially because out in Indio, like I went back out there so I can make more money to get cheaper drugs. And people found out I was pregnant because I had told somebody, and word got around like it always does out there and out on the street. And people were mad, and they were threatening me and like, oh well,
These are people who are using as well.
yeah, and they were like, well, your face isn't pregnant. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Like
and
they were
so-
going to smash your face? Or something?
yeah.
Okay.
And then, but I ended up becoming, it was mostly girls. That guys wouldn't really, but the guys were like, Alyssa, why are you doing this? But they were like all my friends, but the girls were mad. But then the girls, I would end up becoming friends with them. And then me and them would talk and they'd be more understanding after that. And they're like, it turned into like threatening and being mad at me to, you really got to stop. You really have, like them actually caring
Started to
about
take you
me.
under their
and
wing a little bit.
yeah,
right?
it happened a lot. So I ended up meeting this officer, Officer Ibarra, and he was the homeless outreach in Indio, and he was the best cop I've ever
What do
met.
homeless outreach police officers do?
I don't know everything exactly what they do. I know they help the homeless, like getting to and from shelters or finding rehabs or I don't know all what they do. Maybe they just deal with the homeless too and trying like moving them around. I know
awesome.
he would see us like sleeping in places we weren't supposed to in front of businesses and stuff like, and then he would wake us up and instead of trying to arrest us or threaten us like the other cops, he'd wake us up and be like, hey, they called, you got to get out of here. I told you not to stay here. But no matter how many times, he would always give us the benefit of the doubt. He was really cool. He tried, I think 3 to 4 separate times to get me help. He took me and drove me to, and he's not like, he wasn't one of those ones like, oh, let me search you before you get in my car, because he was trying to help us and he understood that he was trying to help us get there, and we weren't there yet. So he would have us get in the back of his car. He would take us over to a place to sign up, or like the homeless shelter. And he would wait with us while we got sorted out, and he would make sure that we got in. And he waited with me while I got into this program, and he helped me get into the ABC club. And that was cool. It didn't last very long because I still obviously wasn't ready still. But yeah, he's somebody I'll never forget. And I tried to nominate him for a bunch of like hero awards and stuff like that online just recently. And these people wrote me back. It was like the Giraffe Awards or something. And they're like, oh yeah, he sounds like the kind of person we would want to be on our site. But then they needed more. They said they couldn't find out, because I couldn't find out his exact email address. And so they were like, we need his contact information and his email and his phone number. And I don't have any of that. Oh, really?
I've emailed him. Mm-hmm.
Oh. Well,
I never heard back from him, but I did email him. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's cool.
I have it if you need it.
Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah. So I ended up going and staying with a friend who was a drug dealer. He had Section 8 housing, and this is over in, I think, Palm Desert.
Yeah, that sounds right.
He had like Section 8 little housing there. And so I went and stayed with him, and he lived with him and a friend, and he always had drugs. So it was good to stay with him. And I really liked him. He was a really good friend of mine. And, but he really liked me, and I felt I was still seeing my baby's father. So I didn't want to,
where was your baby's father?
In jail or not in jail or somewhere. Him and I were always getting separated, so
I think he was in jail.
Probably in jail then. But so he ended up. I was pregnant. I was huge. It was 100 and like I think 125.
You were about 6 months, right, at this point?
No, I was. Well, yeah. 6 or 7. Yeah.
You weren't 7. You were about 6.
Oh well, I was really big. 7? Yeah, I was 7.
Oh.
And I was really big already, and it was like 125 plus outside. It was hot. It was hard for me to do anything now because of how big I was, and I was pregnant. And so I ended up just staying with him all the time, and he just kind of did things. Like he would give me stuff. He would go get me food. He always took care of me. He was always so sweet to me. But one day I was just sitting there inside of the bathroom, and I remember trying to hit myself, trying to shoot up, and I had no veins, and I did this every day. But this day, I was just covered in blood because I was trying so hard to hit myself. He had bought me a pack of needles. I used every single needle so many times, just trying to get the drug in, because I was sick. I was so sick, and I was pouring sweat, and I was crying, and I was like, I can't effing do it. And I was just, there's blood all over the tile. I was just miserable. And all of a sudden I just thought, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't want this. I want to have my babies. I want to go home. I just want to be normal. I don't want to have to do this every single day. I'm so sick of this. And so I decided to get clean and go to rehab. And so I ended up, did I call you? Yeah. And you ended up helping me find a place. And
but it took a while because that whole dual diagnosis, which is
RI
really
International. RI International.
So it's really like a horrible thing when someone's trying to get clean and they have a dual diagnosis. So Alyssa had tried to kill herself at one point in time, and so she had a diagnosis of what would be the diagnosis? Like a mentally ill, like she had been 5150. So in order for her to go into a treatment facility, she would have to.
No, that's not true.
It is true. That's exactly what happened. So you had to go to the RI place, and you had to get a waiver. Oh, really?
Is that why? That's exactly I never knew that's why. Okay. I didn't know that.
So you have to go to the RI place, and you had to get a waiver from them, letting them know it was okay. Or you had to, it wasn't just a waiver, you had to get a prescription from them for your whatever antidepressant you were on.
Oh, because I wasn't seeing a doctor to get my antidepressants. Yeah. That's why.
But the problem with the RI place is I don't know if it's a problem. I don't know how to put it.
Oh, it is.
But it can be a problem.
You should read their reviews on Google.
Alyssa I've taken her there a few times, and it's so she could go in and see a psychiatrist, get the referral, and get out of there and get to a rehab. Well, of course, she's shooting up like every 2 hours at this point, right? So I'm driving her, and it goes against everything you feel as a mother. It's the same thing that Officer Ibarra was probably feeling, letting you in his car without searching you. I know she has needles all over herself. Like there's needles like hidden everywhere. She's looking crazy. She's, she's kind of like out there, but I'm driving her over there to try to get this waiver, for the greater good, to get her into a treatment. And we get there, and some police officers drive up in the parking lot, and you're shoving needles
I remember that.
inside of your pants.
Inside of my underwear.
Yeah, and I'm just like
trying to hide them because I know they're not going to.
Yeah, and
we
I'm
ended up having to stay there 24 hours to be evaluated, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to sit there and not use while I was there, and so I had to make sure to hide it.
And that's a huge issue. They make you stay there, and they search you, right?
So no, they don't. They search your stuff, and they make you pull your pockets out, and then they only let you in the bathroom for a certain amount of time. And so I was there for like 3 minutes in the bathroom and I couldn't hit, and so they were pounding on the door like, get out of there, what are you doing in there so long? What? And I'm just like, hang on, and like trying to hurry, and I can't, and they're just pounding and pounding, get out of there. And I'm there voluntarily trying to get help. So it's not like it's not a rehab, it's a place that helps you get a prescription so that you could go into rehab. So how are we supposed to get help if we can't get this prescription to get to rehab?
Right. Well, and you can't blame them for not wanting.
I'm not blaming them,
but you to have drugs into the issue. I think of that is like a person who is on heroin and shooting up, or even meth and shooting up. I feel like they should make exceptions for them when it comes to something like this, or get them the priority of the appointment. Rather than, obviously they have people there that are trying to commit
but they also
suicide too.
They don't treat people good there either. There's so many complaints about that place. It's bad.
So this was like a huge frustration to me, because I'm trying to work remotely because it was COVID, and I'm trying to drive her and try to keep her out of my house, away from Zoe. And at the same time, I'm getting a call from them going, or from you saying, I need to leave. I've been here all day long. I'm sick. I want to leave. So then I have to drive over there and pick you up. And one night I let you stay the night at my house. And the lady was really nice on the phone. Well, the next day there's different people there. I take you back, and you're there all day again. The second day I had to go pick you up and drive you over to the streets. And that was heartbreaking. And like to take you to the streets and drop you off.
But then the next day was the day I got into the rehab. I was supposed to go that night, right? Or the third day.
It was the third day, because I dropped you off on the second day.
And then, yeah.
And the poor young girl came up and was like, you got to see your daughter, and you got to sleep with her last night. And she was so sad. It broke my heart. I left there, and I just cried all the way home.
So it was a good thing that I ended up not going to rehab that night, because that night is the first overdose I was able to help somebody else. We were all sitting there with that same drug dealer guy that was there where the other person passed away and overdosed and left them. There was like maybe 15 of us all sitting by the bank, and this boy had overdosed. Now, he was sitting up, but he was clutching himself and leaning forward, like sitting. And everybody was saying his name. They're like, Hazard. And I thought he just did meth, so I didn't think he was overdosing. But they were like, "Is he overdosing?" I'm like, "How could he overdose? He does meth." And they're like, "No, he does heroin now." And so I ran over and I saw he was blue. And I pushed him back and I threw him down on the ground and I jumped on him. And I'm pregnant. I'm big pregnant right now. And I jump on him and I start giving him CPR. And I'm like, he's overdosing. Call 911. And I start giving CPR. And everybody jumps up and runs and leaves.
You said the dealer guy was the first one to run.
He was the first one
to take off.
What was his
excuse?
Because he was wanted. But you can't get in trouble from if you call 911 while somebody's overdosing, the police will not arrest you. There is a law prohibiting them from arresting you if you call them for help when somebody is overdosing. They come there and they assist the person, and you are free to go. That's a law. So that's something important for people to know. And I gave him CPR, and 2 people stayed behind with me, only 2. And somebody left me their phone so I could call 911. So I could barely breathe because I'm big and pregnant, and I'm trying to give him CPR. And this guy, he was staring at me, and I'm like, do you know how to do CPR? Because I'm trying to call 911 and talk to them at the same time. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, get down here. And so he starts giving CPR while I'm talking to 911. They come, they administer Narcan. He wakes up, and he's so confused, and he grabs his dog that was there. He had a puppy, brand new puppy, who was freaking out, jumping on him while I was giving him CPR, just crying and crying and crying. And so he picks up his puppy and he walks away, and he leaves.
You said he was
so
mad
confused.
though.
He was mad. He seemed mad, and I was like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "You just overdosed. You weren't breathing." And he was like, "Yeah."
He was mad because you guys.
He was mad because he wasn't high anymore. The Narcan killed his high. It took his high completely away. That's what it does. But anyway, so that just, I don't know, that change, that still like gives me like PTSD sometimes just thinking about that memory. Like really, that was really traumatic.
We have Narcan now in our fridge.
Yeah, we do. We keep it all the time.
At first, she wanted
just
to
in
take it
case.
every time we left the house, almost, because she was
Right.
pretty upset.
Well, then I ended up going to rehab, and I got clean.
We finally got a waiver.
Yeah,
so
and
you
I
did,
ended up
thank
staying
God.
clean for a year. Well, actually, it's been 18 months now. And I got on I had the baby. I had the baby. I was on Subutex. I never got off Subutex because since I was pregnant, it's not safe to get off of Subutex, which is like Suboxone. It wasn't safe for me, but I also wasn't ready to because I just needed that so I wouldn't be sick after the baby. And they started me with, and I had my son Joel, and he was healthy and he was perfect, and he's perfect now too. And I still with my kids. I'm so happy. I've been on Sublocade for 18 months. No, for I think maybe 15 months. I've been on Sublocade. It's a shot once a month that's in my stomach, and it doesn't let me get sick or high or anything for like it's supposed to last only a month, but they said it's probably going to be like
it builds up.
It builds up. So I stopped taking it like 2 months ago, and it's still going to be in my system for like a year. They said since I've been taking it so long. But yeah,
what made you decide to get off the Sublocade?
I'm kind of having these like like not having as many emotions as I used to, like not really feeling anything. It's kind of numb feeling, and I'm sick of feeling like this. I'm not really like sad or happy, but I don't get excited anymore, and I just want that back. I miss that, and I want to make sure that I can have those feelings for myself and for my kids, and be able to enjoy life.
And is it also like a thought of like I don't want to be using anything? Like you feel like you're ready. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I feel like I'm ready. I feel like it's been long enough that, I did want to stay on it maybe for a long term. But then once I started realizing this is the reason why I probably am feeling the way I am, it's more worth it for me to get off of it. And if I need to, I can get back on it.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
So we have 2 more minutes. So
very proud of you. Great
Thank
job,
you.
Alyssa. So I think that's the end of Alyssa's story, and then when I tell my story, we'll go a little bit more into some of Alyssa's stories.
And
I want to dedicate
all the craziness.
The CPS craziness. I want to dedicate this show to Crystal Kobach, a good friend of ours who lost her life recently,
to drugs,
and to her family, the Kobach family. Yeah. We love you all.
We love you guys. And also to Officer Ibarra.
Yes,
Thank you for always believing in me when nobody else did.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM. Have a great day, guys.